Hello, welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. My name is Beth Ann. I finally have a rainy day when I don't need to be doing field work, so I finally have a chance to record some booktube videos. And let's see what else. I'm dehydrated and I'm caffeinated, so let's go with my June wrap up. So I was really happy with my reading month in June. I read one, two, three, I finished 7 books, which for the fact that June is the start of my busy season, I think is really good. And I also read a lot of library books, which is always nice. So I read one Kindle book, a bunch of library books, and only one book that I think I actually physically own. All right, so let's get into it. So the first thing I finished in June was Escape Reality by Kayla Frost, which I read as part of a group read in the Discord over at Megan's Reading Revelations. This is the book that I read on my Kindle, so I will put a photo up of the cover. And this is a self-published book, I believe, that came out really recently, and it's pretty action-packed, pretty technology-heavy sci-fi. So a lot of the characters in the book and a lot of people in the world are modified. They have, all kinds of like computer systems and special weapons and things in their bodies. And the main character we follow, I'm blanking on her name. I think it was Edith. Edith is part or was part of sort of a very elite fighting unit, and she is like totally modded out. And then another thing about this world is it's it's all in space on multiple planets, etc., and everything is run by private corporations. And so she was part of this elite fighting force for a private corporation. And things have gone wrong somehow. So the story opens where Kayla, that's the author, where Edith has just arrived on a prison planet, and she's been sort of horribly traumatized. A lot of her memory is gone, and she's trying to figure out, sort of who she is, what happened to her, and why she's on this prison planet. And then there's some other people who are trying to find her, because it turns out there was a lot of intrigue in why she sort of disappeared and got shipped to this prison planet. There's a love interest, a former love interest. So there's a lot going on. The prison planet ends up being more than it appears. So yeah, there's a lot to like in the premise. There's a strong female protagonist. I think the human modification piece is really cool. As a biologist, I'm sort of used to thinking about how we're sort of programmed with our DNA. And so this, anything with human modification is sort of taking that a step further of incorporating technology into those processes. And so I always think that's a really cool premise. And then the whole corporations run the universe thing is starting to feel a little scarily real in today's world. So yeah, so there's a lot to like in the premise. The book was enjoyable. Like, I'm glad I read it, but it definitely could have been executed a bit better, and not really throwing shade at the author there. I think the book just really needed a strong editor to really pull out the overarching story, because it was hard to keep track of like what the overall themes were, what were the really overall plot things that were important, that sort of really needed to be pulled out. What was how was that sort of driving character development? So it sort of didn't hang together in that way. And to me, that's the sort of thing that really needs an editor to help with, especially for a first-time novel. But the writing was good. So I think it was all in there. It just could be hard to keep an eye on the big pieces, if that makes sense. So I think this is intended to be the first book in a series, and I might pick up future ones as they come out. Just because, again, the premise and the universe seems really cool, and we did end the first novel with some big questions that I think I would like to potentially follow up on. So yeah, so it was a decent opening to my month. All right, then next in line, I have a few books that I've already talked about on this channel, so I'll just mention them really quickly. So first was The Book of Three by Lloyd Alexander, which is sort of a middle grade, early YA fantasy that I think is just beautifully done. It's a simple story, it's told well, so I will link to the video where I talk about that below. Then I also read Written in the Stars by Alexandria Belflore, which was one of my Pride Month picks, and it's a queer romance between two women. I absolutely loved, especially one of the protagonists, Elle. I just want to be her friend. Like, she was amazing. And that was just I thought, a really, really well done romance. So you can see my sort of gush review about it that I will link below. Then a book I haven't talked about on my channel yet was The Cat Who Robbed a Bank by Lilian Jackson Braun. So that is part of the Cat Who sort of silly mystery series. I did own this book, but I've already given it away after reading it. I have like a couple of those Cat Who books floating around my house that I've picked up for free at various points. And they're the sort of things where it's just like, I want to read it once and then give it away. As you know, there's sort of a break and a palate cleanser. So I read that one and gave it away. So it was a pretty typical Lilian Jackson Braun for those of you who are familiar with it. And I just like in those books the interplay between the main character Quillerin, who's usually involved in sort of, he's not really like solving the mysteries, but he's a journalist and he's sort of sticking his nose in all these places. And so each mystery in each book, you know, he's sort of there at every step of the way as the thing eventually gets solved. And he just has a great relationship with his two cats that I really appreciate as a cat lover. And the cats, you know, often sort of inspire him towards realizing things in the mysteries, but they're not like talking cats, you know, they're not, they're behaving very cat-like in a way that every cat owner, I think, understands. So I do have a soft spot in my heart for those books. Okay, then I read American Fairy Tale by Adriana Herrera, which I read on my Kindle, and this was a Pride Month read for me as well. And this is the second book in her American Dreamers series. I think that's the name of the series. But anyway, the first book was called American Dreamer, and I've already talked about it on the channel, so I will link it below. American Fairy Tale was excellent. It was so good to read. But it was not quite as good as the first book, which I just absolutely gushed about. So the first book, American Dreamer, the two love interests is two men, and one owns a food truck focusing on Caribbean food. And then the other one is a like youth services librarian who's trying to get a bookmobile like up and running. So like so much to love there. And so in this one, American Fairy Tale, the two main characters are a bit less sympathetic to me, but that in itself wouldn't have made me sort of ding it a little bit, because they're really well done. They're really great characters. But I think some people have talked about with the first book, like it is really heavy on the social issues, which totally makes sense because, I mean, we're talking about queer protagonists, one of whom is a person of color, you know, like of course social issues are paramount because they affect every aspect of these men's lives. But some people thought that the author, sort of the authorial voice and perspective was coming through a bit too much. I didn't feel that way in the first book, but in the second book, I do see how some people think that about this series. So sort of an authorial perspective on different social issues was really coming through a lot more strongly in this book, which again didn't like take me out of the story or anything, but you know, I was sort of noticing as I read through, and it was less, it felt less important to the characters' development and a little bit more outside the characters, if that makes sense. But it was still a lovely romance. These books are not for people who don't like explicit sex. Now, there's only in each of the books, there's only been a couple scenes of explicit sex, so you can enjoy, and they're short, so you can enjoy huge swaths of the book without it. But American Fairy Tale in particular pretty much opens with like explicit sex, which I actually really appreciated. The specific way that things happened between the two protagonists I thought was really great. But just throwing that out there. But I do really love this series, and I think there are either more already published in it or that are going to come out, because there are 4 really close friends who are at the heart of these stories. And so in these first 2 books, we followed one of those friends in each book. And so there's 2 more. And so I'm like, wait, there's got to be books for those other 2 men. So I assume there are, and I forget. I know I've looked this up, but I will be reading those because I do love this series. Okay, so then next I finished A Crown of Swords by Robert Jordan, the only one I physically have with me right now. So this is book 7 in the Wheel of Time series. It's one of the annoying books in the slog, Jordan slog in the middle of the series, but I love this series. So I talked about it in a video down below in the same video with the book of 3 that I mentioned earlier. All right, and then finally in June I finished Dark Matter by Blake Crouch, which I read with Margaret Bernard as part of her Patreon book club, which was really fun. Like I don't want to say never, but this would have been pretty low on my priority list. It's like a sci-fi thriller. And it was really fun to read, and it was definitely really fun to talk about in the book club. So if you want to be in a book club with Margaret Bernard, please, I'll try to I assume I can link her Patreon. Anyway, I will link her channel and her Patreon below. Absolutely wonderful. And looking forward to the next pick. The book club is only every other month, which for me is like the perfect amount of commitment. So that's been a lot of fun. But anyway, so this book, Sci-Fi Thriller. So this book is, I don't want to give stuff away. There's a like parallel universes aspect to this book. There's a super fancy tech aspect to this book. There's a lot of exploration about sort of like what makes each of us our individual selves, how much of it is sort of innate to us versus how much is based on the like very specific experiences that we each accumulate over the course of our lives. So it was really interesting. I mean, it brought up like some big, sort of existential questions, and the thriller part was fun. It was very fast paced. It was a very fast read because you sort of want to find out what happens. I mean, that said, it's a sci-fi thriller, so there were definitely places where it got a little unbelievable, or places where like I sort of felt like one of the characters should have done something quite different than what they did. And those things are okay in a book. I mean, obviously in a sci-fi thriller, things shouldn't be believable, but the way in which they're unbelievable can either be something you don't even notice, or it can be something that sort of sticks out a little bit. So there were a couple things that sort of stuck out a little bit in this book, I would say. I don't think I gave this like 5 stars. It's not a best book ever, but it was definitely just like really enjoyable. So yeah. Okay. That was my June wrap up that I am filming now at the end of July because I'm just going to be behind for the next couple of months, and that's fine. So I hope you're all having a good reading month in July, and I will see you all in the next video. Thanks. Bye.